After an incredible year of releases in terms of lenses last year from Sony, this year's releases were just a little bit slower, but definitely no less fruitful. This year's releases from Sony have produced two of my favorite lenses to date, one of which I think deserves the crown for my highest recommendation when it comes to lenses. This lens, the Sony PowerZoom 1635 f4G lens. Now, this lens isn't my absolute top number one favorite pick from this year. That video for that lens is coming out next week, but this lens is special because it does almost everything so well. It has so many fantastic things going for it, and priced at $1,200 USD, it's an incredible $1,000 cheaper than the G Master, almost half the price, and it gets the majority of the way in terms of quality. And because of that, it's not hard to recommend this lens when thinking about price to performance, and it's just so good, and it just really has me excited for the next lens releases from Sony next year. Now, this video isn't a review of this lens. You know, there are so many fantastic in-depth reviews for you pixel peepers out there, and if you're really looking to get into the weeds of all of the details, I'll link some fantastic videos from Gerald Undone and Tony Northrup in the description box below that you can check out after this one. But instead, with this video, I'm going to share with you some of my personal experiences using this lens since it came out around the middle of this year. And I also want to share with you some of the things that I absolutely adore about this lens and why I think it is fantastic value for the price. So I've been putting this lens to the test since I got it. I've used it to take landscapes, street photography, architecture, portraits. I've used it for video. I've used it to take a lot of B-roll, a lot of vlog content and all that kind of stuff. You know, actually every single Japan video recently on the channel has been pretty much exclusively shot with this lens for both the B-roll stuff and the talking head stuff. And you know, I've brought this lens to Hawaii and Vietnam and Japan and Australia, and I've used it in the rain and in the hot sun and in 0-degree conditions, and I even brought it into one of the deepest caves in the world. I've used this lens so much that I've barely touched my 1635 G Master this year, and I've just been using this instead. And for those of you who know my work and know how much that I love this G Master, you'll know how much of a big deal all of this is to me. And you know, I would venture to say that the majority of my work is shot with the G Master lens. So to use this lens instead the majority of the year, it's a pretty good signal as to how much I like this little PowerZoom 1635. But let's get specific. You know, what exactly about this lens have I been enjoying so much? Well, the first thing is sharpness, because for me, this lens has to be just as good as the sensational performance that you get from the G Master. And again, I'll direct you to Tony Northrup's video about this, because right now my good copy of my G Master is in Japan, and this one is my broken one, so I can't do an apples to apples comparison, unfortunately. But suffice to say, this lens is damn sharp. So sharp, in fact, that in many cases at an equivalent f4 aperture, the PowerZoom is just as sharp, if not sharper than the G Master in some cases, which is just insane, you know. And having this level of sharpness as a baseline, the foundation, knowing that the images that I'm going to take with this lens are going to be just as sharp using this lens versus using the G Master, is such a great place to start with and gives me such great peace of mind. You know, having this knowledge gives me the confidence to pick up this lens every single time and know that I'm not going to be missing out on image quality by using this over that. And that's a huge relief for me. Now, the second and perhaps the main reason why I find myself selecting this lens over the G Master most of the time this year is actually due to its weight and its size. For some reason or another, I am being a lot more considerate about how much gear I'm bringing with me nowadays. Gone are the days where I can, fill up a camera bag completely with like 3 bodies and like 5 lenses and like a drone and walk around town like it's no big deal. Yes, I am getting older, and the number of complaints about how heavy my camera bag is are only growing as the time goes on. But I find myself increasingly letting go of the idea of the absolute best gear for any and every situation at all costs. And instead, I've been favoring more versatility while keeping the quality as high as it can be. And this means ditching some of the heavier primes that I own. It means not taking, gigantic telephoto lenses with me all of the time. It means keeping things lean without compromising on quality. And that's exactly what this Power Zoom is about. It weighs just a measly 353 grams at a length of 88.1 millimeters versus the G Master at 680 grams and 121.6 millimeters in length. Now, that's 2/3 of the physical length of the lens at almost half of the weight. And when considering the optical performance of this lens, that's just incredible. I mean, again, for me, the fact that this lens is so sharp and so small and so light makes it a no-brainer for me for so many different applications. And that is one of, if not the main reason why I'm picking this lens all of the time this year. Now, I could talk for days about all of the other little reasons why I love this lens, like how fully featured it is with the Power Zoom rocker, the iris lock, the aperture control, the insanely fast autofocus, the internal zooming, the water and dust resistance, and so much more. But again, this is not a review, and I'll leave the Sony product page in the description for you guys so that you can check out all of the latest features that this lens comes with. But I did want to address the elephant in the room when it comes to this lens versus that lens, the Power Zoom versus the G Master, and that is the fact that this is indeed an f4 aperture lens. And that is really the biggest trade-off you're making here. This is f4 versus f2.8. So the main considerations you really have to make here are around 2 things: depth of field and low light performance. Now, when it comes to depth of field, it really comes down to the genres and the categories that you're shooting. If you are shooting landscapes, you probably want a deeper depth of field anyway to get everything in focus, and you're probably already shooting quite wide, which means, again, your depth of field is naturally going to be much deeper anyway. So f4 is okay for landscape photography, but if you are shooting at the 35mm end and you're shooting, say, portraits, for example, then this lens is probably not for you if you absolutely love bokeh. For me, I still use my 35mm G Master f1.4 for my portraits and will deliberately bring that lens with me on a portrait shoot. But the Power Zoom is still great for more contextual portraits where defocused background blur isn't such big of a consideration and you are going, wider than the typical portrait focal lengths anyway. For me, most of the time, I use this lens as my vlog lens as well, and I find that f4 is decent enough in terms of depth of field on the face. It's not so blurry where, everything else is out of focus and it kind of looks overproduced, but it's not so deep as well where there's no separation between you and your face and the background and the context that you're in. I also have the 20mm f1.8G lens as well, which is great, but I really enjoy a deeper depth of field where you can see the background and the context that I'm in, and you can kind of engage with me in that way over, having everything just be bokeh. But of course, that is totally personal preference though, and there is a time and a place for everything in all levels of bokeh. Now, one area where the G Master absolutely wins hands down over the Power Zoom is the low light performance. At f2.8 versus f4, you're effectively losing a stop of light across the board, which is definitely problematic in some cases, especially if you're not using a full frame body. So I've had to learn to be a little bit more considerate about how I use artificial lighting in low light situations or in situations where I'm not using a tripod. Now, for me, I get to be in a fortunate position where I get to use all of the newer bodies like the Alpha 1 and the Alpha 7 IV and the Alpha 7 R5. And I've been using all of these bodies with fantastic success, and all of these bodies have fantastic low light capabilities. So for me personally, that's not much of a concern, but for everyone else who is using APS-C, that's definitely something to call out and something to be aware of. So I've been singing a lot of praise for this lens in this video, but that now begs the question, who is it for? Well, if you are already shooting on a full frame body, and if you want a lens that can shoot many different genres of photography like landscape and architecture and street and the occasional portrait, especially contextual portraits, then this lens is for you. If you shoot a lot of video and you want something small or light to run and gun with, or if you frequently use a gimbal and you want a lens that internally focuses so that you can balance it well while, also being able to control the zoom from a gimbal, then this lens is for you as well. If you're very conscious about weight and how heavy your backpack is going to be, especially on those longer trips, and you want something that is still extremely high quality and also very lightweight and very compact as well, then this lens is for you. And if you want something that's all of those things and does it at a fair medium price compared to the rest of the lenses in the entire Sony range, then 100% this Power Zoom 1635 is for you. Now, this lens might not be for you if you're shooting on APS-C bodies and you're concerned about high ISO, or you're mainly shooting at nighttime or in low light situations, or you find yourself hunting for the creamiest of bokeh all of the time. For that, the G Master is still the best option in terms of a fast and a wide zoom lens, but depending on your needs, a fast prime might be an even better idea. Now, to wrap up, it's pretty rare of me to give such a outstanding recommendation, let alone be able to wholeheartedly say without reservation that this lens is, in my opinion, the best bang for buck out of the entire Sony lineup, outperforming all of the other zooms and even most of the primes when considering price to performance. This lens has almost G Master level quality at a G level price, and I think Sony have really outdone themselves this time. Don't sleep on this lens. All right, I'll leave some links to some good YouTube reviews to the Sony product page and to an affiliate link if you're looking to purchase in the description box below for you guys to check out. And of course, if you are looking to support the channel, check out my courses, prints, presets, and ebooks in my store. And that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. But until then, get out there and make something that matters. Peace.